If you're looking at me and thinking, I bet that guy is not a dog trainer, you'd be right. When my childhood Shih Tzu, Dreidel, did his business on the orange shag carpet in our living room, I dragged him by the scruff, brought him to the offending Hanukkah gift, stuck his face near it, and sternly yelled, "No, Dreidel!" Then I put him outside for a while, hoping he would comprehend that the backyard was where he was meant to do his business. Did Dreidel understand? It happens to be that Dreidel was wicked smart for a dog, and probably understood perfectly. But he wasn't about to inconvenience himself when there was plenty of shag carpet inside, and no reward involved with going outside. This went on for years. Day after day, I focused on Dreidel's offensive gift rather than the good things he did. I didn't have the time or patience or knowledge, and instead I chose to suffer, thinking that Dreidel just couldn't learn. I've spent my professional career working with Jewish children in day schools and camps, and I've come to learn one very important lesson. Kids are animals. Now, I don't mean this in a pejorative way, as if to suggest that they are wild beasts. Surely, some kids behave that way on occasion, but that's not my point. Rather, I mean that children and animals share a lot of similarities that I believe we can exploit to become better parents and teachers. The question I want you to think about for the next few minutes is, how can I get my students to behave the way I want them to? I hope that by the end of these few minutes, Dreidel the Shih Tzu will help you think about at least one strategy based in the Torah that will help you achieve this goal. There's a custom mentioned in the Midrash to begin teaching our youngest children Torah from Parshat Vayikra. The Midrash actually uses the word tinokot, babies, when mentioning this custom, as if to suggest that it's important to start teaching Torah to our children when they're still little babies, and more importantly, to teach them Torah like we teach our babies. Can you remember when you had a newborn baby? You constantly encouraged that baby. When he smiled at you, you smiled back. When he said his first word, more positive encouragement from you. And when he cried at night, did you get angry? No, of course not. You probably just rolled over and let your wife or husband get him, but the point is, we only use positive reinforcement with our babies. The way we train our babies stops at some point. When our children reach a certain age, we expect them to learn in a different way. When they do something we like, we rarely acknowledge it. But when they do something wrong, we are quick to correct them and more often than not, punish them. Vayikra is all about animals, and the custom to start learning with that parsha highlights the connection between our children and animals. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about how we treat our students and how we treat our pets, including Dreidel. Remember Dreidel? How do dog trainers get those dogs to behave so well? We all know the answer. Scooby snacks. As any successful animal trainer will tell you, the only way to get an animal to do what you want is to reward it. Start with the animal's baseline behavior and reward it for any action it displays that even remotely relates to your desired behavior, even if the animal doesn't mean to behave that way. The trainer's consistent reward of that behavior will lead the animal to make a conscious choice to behave that way in the future. And once an animal has mastered that behavior, the trainer moves on to the next and the next, rewarding each level. And ultimately, the animal is jumping through hoops and riding on water skis. It's amazing what positive reinforcement will do. The opposite is also true, of course. Animal trainers who are successful never punish their trainees for demonstrating undesirable behavior. They just don't reward it. Think about how we interact with our students as teachers. When our kids behave in class, do we ignore it because it's expected, or do we make a big deal? When a child raises his hand to answer a question, which is probably a rule in the class, what happens when the teacher calls on the student by saying, "Moshe, thank you so much for raising your hand so nicely. What's your question?" And when our kids misbehave in class, how do we typically react? Do we write their names on the board, send them outside, take away recess or points on a test? Do these really achieve the goals we have for our kids? A mountain of research supports the idea that treating our kids like we treat our animals has potential to yield the results we most desire. I'm speaking about something called positive behavior support. Basically, this is the idea that we reward all positive behavior that we want kids to repeat. At the same time, we don't punish kids when they don't perform the way we want. Can you begin to imagine what this would look like in your classroom or school? I'm sure some of you are secretly scoffing in your heads. We can't let kids misbehave without consequences. So I challenge you to try it for 1 week in one of your classes. Unless someone is really in danger, physically or emotionally, ignore behavior that is undesirable. Only compliment positive behaviors, and do that all the time. Sadly, Dreidel ran away one day, so I never had the chance to see if positive reinforcement would work with him. If I had invested the time to personally take him outdoors, reward him for being out there, and then reward him again for doing his business out there, I suspect Dreidel would have quickly shifted his behavior, and I would have a much cleaner carpet. Maybe he'd be riding on water skis today. I am far from the perfect teacher or father, but in my classroom and in my parenting, I rely on positive behavior support to generate the behaviors that I most desire in my students and children. If I know and I believe that smacking Dreidel on the nose with a newspaper will do nothing for me, then how can I imagine doing the equivalent to my students and children?